I find myself shaving have a pair of pants in my car, which I do not have a pair of I always do keep some ratings. But I never thought I'd need to go back. Clothes and stuff. Taxes and short-term rentals.
Whatever the host rate is, like if you have a house and you want to market it on Airbnb, then you set what the rate is, and then they automatically say, okay, 7% every year, and then it's up to the host. What the applicable taxes are, like room occupancy taxes, which is so then they even provide a link. They put every site goes directly to this tax.
Somebody.
Robert.
Just water in the bottle.
I mean, we worked at it for a few years, a couple of years, you know. So
Well, but even the breakdown is not correct. Like it says, post policy, says 2%, actually 2.7.
17. She's a senior in high school right now. So she's down there in Florida living with her daddy.
There's two of them.
Gone.
I don't know whether to talk closer or further away.
These mics actually pick you up further away, so don't really get on top of it. Maybe about right here.
Daddy.
Let's move it over here like that. Try something because I noticed I watched some of the stuff and like one day me and Phil, you couldn't understand this.
Well, we've been doing a lot of work on tweaking the sound and stuff.
And I don't understand that because I mean we supposed to be high tech. That should be easy. No, really. I'm just saying that John.
No. Do the best you can, and then
Put it on TV for a reason. Sometimes they're not speaking the mic. You can't hear it.
Sometimes I say the third time's a charm.
I'm gonna tell you that right now before we even get started.
Thank you. I heard something about your shoes today as well.
setting the trend, man.
Thank you. Hey,
Try to.
they had a few of them things that on that book. On that book, I got to get checked. I'm gonna check with either you or Mike. So then the numbers he told us to check, that one was off 70, one was off 30. So I mean, with the numbers in the book, it what he said to check. So I don't know if it's supposed to be 92 or 22.
But this one, I cannot. The city phone. That emergency notification thing. Where it goes off like every 30 minutes. Hurricane.
My sister went through it. She got it all marked. I don't know if they copied the numbers wrong.
They did.
You kept saying something. moved.
The mayor is at a family funeral this morning, and but he will be at our regular council meeting later this afternoon.
Test.
We will be asking you to come back at 1:30 to help us, among other things, approve a declaration of emergency for the hurricane that we'll have for you to vote on at the 1:30 meeting. And just as FYI, that we have announced a mandatory evacuation of the harbors this morning, so their boats are all pulling out now. We have a number of guests here this morning. I know you're going to introduce them, Council President, so I'll skip over those names for now. Well, I wanted we're talking about special guests when they come as far as Jackson to come to a meeting, so I just wanted to recognize Ms. Linnell Strait from the Mississippi Department of Revenue, along with Veronica Smith and Greg Duke over here, who made the long drive from up the middle of the state to be with us today. We've also got Supervisor Beverly Martin here this morning, and Linda Hornsby representing the Hotel and Motel Administration, all here to help you with some of the questions that you may have about short-term rentals. Today in Biloxi, we have somewhere between 30 and 40 hotels. Now, it's interesting, I can't tell you the number because it's a little odd, because some of the hotels in D'Iberville and in St. Martin's have Biloxi mailing addresses, so do we count them as a Biloxi and so forth, but it's 30 to 40 hotels. But we have over 300 short-term rentals that have been permitted in the city, and this is a big issue that you and the council along with us have been dealing with. We gave you an ordinance change a while back regarding short-term rentals, along with a resolution that had an option for a public hearing. Both of those were tabled pending this special meeting so that we could provide additional information regarding taxation, which we'll be able to do today. At your place, you'll have a copy of that ordinance along with the resolution for the special meeting. Note I've marked the one page with the language regarding taxation, which was problematic. That's why we're here today, and this completes the mayor's report. I yield back to you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. And again, Ms. Linnell, thank you for being here, as well as Ms. Smith and Mr. Duke. Thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to have one of our supervisors here interested in what's going on in the city of Biloxi. Thank you for being here. And Ms. Hornsby, all the work you do with the Hotel Association. Thank you again. I'm going to bring this up to the council reports. If you guys would keep it short, I know we have a lot to go over today. If there's any discussions in our council report that are
No report.
well, if that's short enough. Councilman Guines, report. All right, well, that will lead us into the policy agenda, and this is the substance of this meeting. It's the public agenda. I apologize. We'll have 3 minutes per person in the audience if they care to speak, and we'll reserve 45 minutes in total. If you care to speak, please come up to the table, state your name and address for the record, and sign in. Now, what I would suggest that if you have questions, it's not going to be a back and forth, but I'm going to write down every question that you guys have, so we'll try to address it during the substance of the meeting. So anybody on the right-hand side of the room or my left-hand side of the room that would care to come up and speak or propose a question for us to address, please do so now.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see y'all. Jacqueline Wilson with Biloxi Beach Resort Rentals. So I'm glad we're able to have this meeting. During that time frame of our last meeting, the State Tax Commission did get with me. They have changed my TAP system, so it allows me to break down the city of Gulfport and Biloxi for the 7% sales tax. So I have started doing that. They've asked me to amend up to 36 months, so I've started working my way back from 2007 forward to do the amendments. Miss Veronica helped me at the Tax Commission. She's very helpful. So just to let y'all know, they did override my system to allow that. So I am forward doing them correctly, and I'm amending up to 36 months so that Biloxi will have their fair share of the 7%. So that has been completed. I'm not aware of other management companies are starting to do it. They would not give me that information, but I've started to do it. So the only other question that I have is, I still don't understand why our industry is the only one that's being asked to present the sales tax proof. Other than that, I think we've accomplished making sure that Biloxi gets their fair share of the sales tax. And then I'd like to also know what the State Tax Commission thinks they're going to do as far as the people who still use VRBO and Airbnb, and it is automatically taken out, and those platforms are not giving the homeowners who self-manage the documentation they need to present to the city. So that's a big problem, because a lot of people use VRBO and Airbnb. So I don't know how the State Tax Commission plans on getting that documentation from them. So that's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Is there anybody else that would care to speak? Ms. Hornsby? If you would, please state your name and address for the record and sign in for me.
Linda Hornsby, 1167 Bayview Avenue, Biloxi. I'm here, I have made a list of some questions, and I feel like once you all get into the thing, the meat of this, they'll probably be answered, so I don't want to go into all of them. First of all, I just wanted to, on the most recent bill, House Bill 379, I believe it is, it deals with third-party retailers, third-party marketplace, third-party facilitators. These are basically your OTAs, which is an online travel agent. Examples, Expedia, Airbnb. And let me just give you an idea of what Expedia owns. They own Agencia, Expedia Inc., Hotels.com, Hotwire, Numinous, Orbitz, Travelscape, HomeAway, and Vrbo. HomeAway owns Vrbo now, so that's a lot of bookings. And most recently, we were provided with a thread of emails between one of the local hotels that is 10 rooms, or that is under 10 rooms, and Expedia told them, and stood by it for quite a while, that they were not responsible for the 2% room tax, because when that tax was first enacted in 2004, there was an exemption for 10 rooms or under. However, in 2007, the legislation which created the Mississippi Gulf Coast Regional Convention and Visitors Bureau, it went back to the definition of 1 room or more, and that's what the DOR's definition of a hotel is, everything. So there is no exemption any longer. And also a point that I've discovered again, Airbnb, I contacted Airbnb as if I wanted to list a property of my own, and that would make me a host. And they said they automatically, when you put the address in, they have the 7% sales tax on there. But they provide a link for the host when they're filling out what their rates are and any fees. There might be a cleaning fee, there might be a deposit. When they're filling that out, it is up to the host to put in the applicable local taxes, room taxes, basically. And so they provide a link to the DOR's website. That's good. And on that list, if you have a property in Biloxi and you look on that list for Biloxi or you look for Harrison County, it is not on that list. The taxes, the 5% tax is due on all properties in Harrison County, but instead it's down under the M's, Mississippi Gulf Coast Convention and Visitors Bureau and Mississippi Coast Coliseum and Convention Center. Because I guess that's the way the taxes were originally levied in the legislation, but that is not even how the distribution is. And I think they're correct on the distribution, but I'm just saying it is confusing for a host, somebody that just happens to have an apartment or a house and they want to rent it out. It's very unlikely that they're going to go down the entire list. If they've gone and looked in Biloxi and they've looked in Harrison County and it's not on there, I would assume, unless I knew better, that all you owe is a 7% tax. And so those are two, I think, key things, but I'm anxious to hear. I appreciate you all having this because I'm anxious to hear some of the intricacies of how it works. And also what prompts an audit by DOR. I would like to, because I don't know how the accuracy of any filing is determined, and at what point do they maybe say, I think we need to do an audit of this property or operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hornsby. Thank you for being here. Is there anybody else on the right-hand side of the room, my left-hand side, that would care to speak? Supervisor Martin, we all know who you are, but if you would, for the record, state your name, your
Beverly
position.
Martin, Harrison County Supervisor, District 1, 2012 Bayou Laporte Drive, Biloxi.
And sign in for me, if you would.
I will.
Thank you.
So, sorry about that. You know, I can't write and talk at the same time. So it was brought to the attention of the Harrison County Board of Supervisors that some of these properties that Ms. Hornsby referred to, that Expedia and Airbnb and some of these third-party booking agents were wrongfully thinking that they were exempt because they had 10 rooms or less. That law, of course, was changed in 2007, I think. So since 2007, we believe that these third-party booking agents have not been collecting this other 5% tax that we need to pay the Coliseum bond issue and that funds the tourism board. So we as a board voted a month ago, or when it came to our attention, which was last month, to send a letter to the Department of Revenue asking them to look into this. We also sent one to Expedia to see if they would show us, number one, have they been collecting that room tax, and number two, who they've been giving it to, because we haven't gotten it. And by our calculations, what's that, 13, 14, 15 years? That's some money somebody owes the county and the city. And that will help us, especially in these trying times, when that Coliseum bond payment is still due. And as we all know, there's not been a whole lot happening as far as conventions go, and tourism still needs to be funded now more than ever. So that was kind of where the Board of Supervisors got involved with this, and we have not gotten a response. But like I said, we just did this a couple of weeks ago. So we would ask that maybe you join us in asking that one question as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Martin. If you would, could you share with us what you passed with the county? Could you send us a copy
I'll
of
get
it?
a copy of the letter that we sent and send it over to your clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else on the right-hand side of the room that would care to speak? My left-hand side. Is there anybody on the left-hand side of the room or my right-hand side that would care to speak? If so, please come forward now. There being none, we will close citizens' comments and we'll move to the policy agenda, which is the subject matter of this special meeting. What I would like to do is begin with Ms. Linnell Straight, if she could take your place, Mr. Leonard, so we could ask her some questions regarding the Department of Revenue.
Thank you.
Ms. Linnell, thank you for being here. What I'm going to do is just address some of the questions that that some of the previous speakers had. If you could
I think I
help
have
me
them all
answer
written
those.
down.
And then I'm going to go to the individual council members and allow them to speak and communicate with you one-on-one. So the first one, Ms. Wilson discussed an override that she was provided the ability to, you helped her override the system so she could adjudicate the amount of taxation that should be appropriated to Biloxi versus Gulfport. Now, she referenced an override. Is there a system that does that without having to have a special override? Would every one of our vendors have to get an override to determine the amount of taxes paid on behalf of Biloxi properties versus Gulfport?
It's not an override in the system that is required. It's a matter of how the return is being prepared. So there can be some education, if you will, and we have a group in our sales tax department that is dedicated to auditing returns each month. And I will tell you, for all the special levies that Mississippi has, it's become ever more obvious to us that we're expanding that group of people that work in sales tax that do that. So we routinely, as part of what the auditor is doing with that now, they may call, they may ask questions. Now, knowing that she was a property manager that had properties in both places, that could have maybe that could have been picked up on in her registration at the time she did the registration. I don't know that she disclosed to us that the properties were in both locations, but it's required that if they're in multiple cities, they have to file a distribution by city. Some other companies that have been named here today, that is exactly what they are required to do when they complete their returns. And so and I'll say some of the bigger companies, I mean, they go actually by county, and then they have to pick every city that's in that. Once they click on a county, then it has each city, they get the rates. So we get the rates in, then we go to another part of the return where they have to break out distribution by city and give all of the sales listed by the city. And then from there, behind the scenes in the computer programming is how all the diversion comes out to the different whomever the sales tax, whomever the special levy by law is being diverted to and is paid out monthly from the Department of Revenue. So it's use the word override, I think it's just a matter of making sure that she was understanding which part and where to go in the return to file the distribution by city.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we need to make sure that our vendors are providing the DOR a distribution by city. There's a document that helps them
If they have
segregate.
properties in multiple cities, that would be the question. Are you completing the part of the return that has the distribution by city?
Okay.
If you are having, I don't know, community education seminars and discussing third-party rentals with the public in general, that would be a question. If you are having problems with that, please contact DOR.
Okay, well, that brings me, you segued right into the third-party concerns of some of the speakers. Now, are the speakers correct that they are not exempt from the taxation?
No.
Okay.
No.
With helping them collect and appropriate the taxation, is there a way to put what Ms. Hornsby addressed under the M section for the Mississippi Coliseum section under Harrison County? Is that a website change that we can make?
On our website, we list all of the special levies on the DOR website. You'll find them, and they are listed by name as the bills are passed in the legislature. Now, we've got a little alphabet listing across where you can quickly go through the list, and if you're looking for Harrison County and you hit H, unless you know the name of your levy, that is it's going to be part of educating your public to do that. Now, I don't know that, I'll take that back as a suggestion today. Maybe we need to list those in both places. I'm going to go back after I've heard that today. It's just been our policy to put it on our website as it is passed in the bill. What I believe she's referring to too, when it takes you to a link, that is their link, that particular taxpayer's link, and how they are, giving information to their customers, their host or whatnot. So again, it's the same issue. That same individual that is doing that, looking through, I think she said Airbnb, so as you're looking through that, if that same individual went to our website, they would have the same problem because they're not going to go to the H's.
Well,
and so maybe we can, I'll find out and talk to our executive staff about maybe possibly finding a way to put that in the H part of the alphabet, Harrison County, or also maybe a reference to refer back to Harrison County, something. We will, I believe that's something we can assist with, but that link is not something that they're doing. It's going back to what we've done. Now, I do want to address, the law was passed that required these marketplace facilitators, was signed at the end of June, but with an effective date of July 1. Now, typically, our legislature would end on the year of a new governor. They get 4 months, but if it's a consecutive year, it's 3 months, and COVID, it's extended that session. So when the governor signed that at the end of June, and boom, it was effective July 1, we put a notice out stating exactly what the law said, and the Department of Revenue is the sign date, that bill effective date is very clear. We're not going to put out any information that would be contradictory to what the governor signed into law. So we had questions from many companies who said, I can't put this into play that quickly, Linnell. I don't have the computer programming ready in 3 days for this. I would assume you all can understand that. So I said, you got to get it in there. You have to understand what the bill says. You're going to be liable for it. We can assist you in any way to get you registered as quickly as possible, but I cannot put in a notice that you have a 30-day grace period, that you have a 60-day grace period, that you have a 90-day grace period. We're not going to put anything in writing in a notice that's going to contradict what the governor signed into law. So with that said, you all have to understand, people are trying to get this in. That company had some sort of contract service, as I understand it. I actually got from Gulfport or Biloxi, I got a series of emails sent to me almost addressing exactly what she was saying, because they went back and forth, and those got forwarded to me. I've since had a multi-person conference call, and we have worked through that with multiple companies, okay, because they were pulling something, I believe, from a survey from years past. It wasn't current. I think that was a contract group with this particular company. So when we explained, you have to understand the wording in that levy, that's changed, and how we interpret that for those levies that say it applies, it does not apply to, if it has 6 rooms or less, or 10 rooms or less, or anything. And what you'll find is most of the older levies, like that one, before it was changed, had that wording in. Now, I've been with the agency 33 years, so I can tell you what my layman's explanation of that was when those levies went into play. Much like the restaurant levies, you'll see some of the older ones. You can just go through our alphabetical listing on our website. You can see the dates they were put into law, and you can read. You've got some restaurant levies out there that say they're not applicable to businesses that don't have 100,000 in sales in a year or 250,000 in sales for a year. Now, that's always been explained to me, that when these things first began to be passed by the legislature, there were quite a few municipalities who didn't want the mom and pop hometown restaurants downtown. They were after the chain restaurants that were out closer to the interstate, okay? So this is where these numbers got put in. By the same token, when the hotel motel levies began to be passed, you had some smaller towns that had bed and breakfasts that were routinely collecting the 7% tax. They didn't want the hometown bed and breakfast to have the levy applied to them, which is where you get into this 10 rooms or less, 6 rooms or less. They were after the chain hotels in town. So many of the, your levy was changed in that year. Many of the municipalities have not updated their levies, and that's a question that we get frequently, because as the people retire who were part of that in city council or the city attorney's office, or you have new people that are working with these tourism levies that are employed by the cities and the tourism groups, they'll make phone calls routinely to us. Can you tell me whether or not, how come ours is not going up if Airbnb made their registration public and we can find these in our area, why is my diversion not going up? And I'll say, go back and look to the reading of your levy. It won't apply to third-party rentals of homes. So until your levy is updated, it will simply not apply, okay? I'll also address one thing when she talked about, do you know all the companies that Expedia owns? I'll just throw in there for FYI. That's no secret. You can Google that. If you haven't found out yet, Priceline owns the majority of the rest of them. So if they don't fall under one umbrella, they typically are falling under the other. And many of those names they are trade names, but they may not be an actual legal entity that's renting any of things. So some of those companies are not actually doing the rental, but it may be a trade name that you're seeing on TV, but it's not an actual legal entity. But you can look at that through Secretary of State or whatnot and find those that are the legal entities. So again, I think that was with the company that you mentioned. I believe that's where the confusion came. It was a source that they were using, a third-party source to handle the emails and whatnot, but the company understands where one email was sent to me, they gave contradicting information. They actually had that contradicted the law change, but then at the same time, they sent the same person, that was a third-party person, they sent the same information that's the current information in one email. So what they sent actually contradicted. They gave them the old that they had pulled off the website, and then they had given them the new. So I think it's a matter of a rush of all of these companies trying to get registered, trying to do what the bill required them to do. And I think in a matter of time here, we're going to see this smooth out. And when they all get registered, we'll understand that and understand they are like any business that's locally owned here. These people are subject to audit, just like any local business here is subject to audit, and all of that will be addressed as these businesses are audited. So I hope that cleared up the old information.
If I could, Council President.
Mr. Leonard?
We tripped up earlier on one sentence that's in your ordinance package. I would really like for that to be read and to ask Ms. Sprigg if he has any issue with that or what would be the problem. The sentence reads, short-term rentals shall provide proof that sales tax records to the Department of Revenue have been submitted and that a guest register has been maintained. I'll put that back.
Okay.
I think that,
It's that sentence.
Mr. Leonard, I think there was actually, Peter Abide. Well, Mr. Abide proposed a different modification than the one you just read in. Let me read it and tell me if you agree with it. Then short-term rentals shall provide proof that sales tax records have been submitted to the Department of Revenue showing the city as the short-term rental location, or that such taxes have been collected by a third party. So I think this takes into consideration our concern with the filing of a distribution of cities to make sure that we are being accounted for taxes generated within our city. Mr. Leonard, do you have a problem with the proposed language that I just read?
No, but I would ask the Department of Revenue to comment on whether it's accurate.
Ms. Straight, do you have a copy of that language so you can look at it?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any concerns with that language?
Well, let me say, as the city, if it's your ordinance, I believe you can and ask whatever you want to require of the taxpayer. Let me also remind you, though, that from the standpoint of our department, in the law, sales tax returns and the content of sales tax returns are classified as confidential information. Now, you may already realize that the city has access to a list, as well as for the special levies of taxpayers that are remitting money to you each month, okay? But it's not going to have any amounts because we consider return information to be confidential information. I don't know that, and you have city attorneys that can help you with that, whether the state certainly can't release that. So I don't know if the majority of your taxpayers would even know that they can't be compelled to provide that information publicly. You know, and then the question would be, you know, what kind of safeguard, if you're asking for that from them, are you going to have to make sure that that information doesn't become public elsewhere? You know, so I can speak not from the hat of DOR, but to say if I were a taxpayer here doing that, I would probably be asking my own legal counsel, am I compelled to give them the contents of my tax returns? Because I don't believe that I would have to. Now, I'm going to back up from that and tell you that's what Linnell Straight would be asking you. And then if so, what is your policy and how are you going to safeguard my information if I chose to voluntarily give it to you? Now, you all, I do have a suggestion. Have you ever considered asking any of these people to disclose their contract language that they have with their rental platform? What does the contract that they have with the rental form say about the taxes? These companies were not required by law to collect these taxes until July of this year.
Ms. Straight, can I interrupt you for one moment? Mm-hmm. Mr. Abide, in the proposed modification, it says short-term rentals shall provide proof that sales tax records have been submitted to the Department of Revenue. That doesn't suggest that they have to tell us how much was paid. So if we do get a list, you said we can verify if they have contributed some amount, just not the amount that they paid, just that they have contributed some amount. Is that correct?
Well, understand, if a homeowner is listed on a marketplace, we are not going to register them and give them a sales tax account. We do not want homeowners all across the coast having sales tax accounts that are on a marketplace. We want the marketplace collecting that tax as the law is requiring. You also, sales tax number has purchasing power. I mean, we're not going to give out sales tax accounts to individual homeowners who are going to rent out part-time.
I'm interested in what Ms. Hornsby is holding up. She was holding up a paper.
One second, I'll get to Ms. Hornsby. Ms. Straight, the language continues and it says, or that such taxes have been collected by a third party. So I think that if they are on a marketplace, then Peter Bide, correct me if I'm wrong, that demonstrating in the contract that that third party is collecting the sales tax would suffice for the language that's in this proposed modification. Is that correct, Mr. Abide?
Yes, and we also asked them if they have a contract to tell us who their contract is with. And this is designed just to show.
Can you use the microphone?
It's designed to show that there is a mechanism in place that it is being collected. We're not asking for the amount. That is something that can be determined very easily by the individual owner if they're on a platform, what those amounts are. But at this stage, we're just saying it's either, if you have an agreement with one of the platforms, your agreement's going to show whether or not it's being collected by them or not in that agreement. And we do ask for that information, I think.
Thank you. Ms. Horn, I'm going to respect Mr. Guines' request first. Ms. Hornsby, Mr. Guines was interested in what you were
Could you
holding
come
up.
up to the microphone where Mr. Abide is at? Mr. Abide, could you let her have your microphone for? Oh, just come on over here.
This is, I'm reading from Airbnb's website where they instruct a host what to do. Put in your rate, put in your cleaning fee, and it says, find out how occupancy, tax collection, and remittance by Airbnb works. Note, hosts located in these areas are responsible for assessing all other tax obligations, including state and city jurisdictions. Hosts with listings in these areas should also review their agreement with Airbnb under the terms of service and familiarize themselves with the occupancy tax provisions which allow us to collect and remit taxes on their behalf, and explain how the process works. I cannot find, I've only been able to find one or two that actually are operating as a business, and they are aware of what the occupancy taxes are. I'm talking about these individual short-term rentals. The majority of them do not know what the applicable taxes are, and if they go to that website, and I appreciate y'all being able to maybe all it would take is a cross-reference under the cities of Harrison County and Harrison County, at least Harrison County, so that if a short-term rental were to abide by what Airbnb is saying, then they would go, well, mine is in Biloxi. No, I don't see Biloxi on here. Well, let me look under Harrison County. Nothing. And so it's very unlikely that they would know how the levy was written to go down to the M's and find the applicable taxes that are due. So a cross-reference would certainly help that. But, you know, if anybody is not doing that, any of these short-term rentals, then it's not being collected.
Ms. Hornsby, in that contract, based off the language of this proposed modification, if they presented the contract to the city, would it show in that contract what taxes they were assessing for?
I'm not sure.
Can you come to the microphone, Ms. Wilson?
As an individual homeowner who is self-managing a unit, what'll happen is they'll get a receipt for the bookings that shows how much rental income was collected, what cleaning fees, and resort fees, processing fees, and then how much sales tax was collected. But that's all it will show. And I did bring it with me that day to the meeting because I do have a owner who's on my program who also has Airbnb and VRBO, and he printed out a receipt for me. So it will show the tax that's collected.
That's right, but what I'm concerned is when you set it up.
Contract The contract will not show that. It is left up to the individual to know what their sales tax is, depending on their location.
Well, when you set it up, when you go on to Airbnb, and forgive my ignorance because I've never done this, and you click in to become a new marketplace participant, whatever the terms would be, and you click Biloxi and you click that, there's nothing that's printed up that shows which taxes you clicked to
Links.
collect from?
No, it links you to your Department of Revenue.
That's right, but if you do that, but you have to put in something in order, it's going to collect sales tax.
Will show you
So
the 7% sales tax, but Linda's speaking of the 5% specialty, and it doesn't link you to that.
Right, but if it did link you to that and you clicked it.
That's right.
Would that show on your contract that they are going to collect for those two taxes?
No, it just shows the sales tax. It just says collecting sales tax.
Ms. Straight?
Is there any wording that when you were going through there and registering and all of those things that pop up, I agree, like going through an AT&T deal, you have to scroll up and I agree before you go to the next step. Did you print any of that and look at in the wording in there about what it said as to who was responsible for the collection?
I did not for that owner. See, my company's different. We are the third party, and then we contract with a company called Vacay Homes, and they contract with Airbnb, VRBO, Travelocity, Expedia, all those places. Now, they have changed it for me to where VRBO will collect the sales tax. So before, I was saying my reservation total is $3,000, and in that $3,000 was 12% sales tax. They are no longer giving me the option to collect it. That just changed now with VRBO. So I'm fighting with them because I don't want to change. I like collecting my sales tax. I like remitting it myself.
That's not going to be allowed per the new law. It's going to have to be collected by the marketplace. The law says that. That's not going to be optional for you if you were on that marketplace.
Yeah, because being a management company, we would have to set up an account for every single condo with Airbnb and VRBO. That's why we use that third-party platform, and then that's their responsibility to set that up. But yeah, VRBO they are no longer allowing me to collect the sales tax, which is...
Because they are liable for it.
Yeah, and I understand that. Just like I'm liable for my owners, my contract with my owners states that Biloxi Beach is to collect all sales tax and remit it to the proper department, and that's what we do. So my owners will be held harmless if I didn't pay my sales tax. But no, on Airbnb and VRBO, it doesn't give it in your contract. It just states that they will collect that sales tax and remit it, but it doesn't give a specific dollar amount or percentage of what they're going to.
Well, I'm not looking for that. I'm just which ones you collect. Biloxi, whatever, Mississippi sales tax, Harrison County. It doesn't say which taxes it's going to collect. That seems interesting. Councilman Tisdale?
Yeah, I just want to make an observation. I hope I'm accurate with this, and that is we all agree there's a problem. There's a communication issue, and I'm thinking there's some guidance that has to go out. We've got the operators, we've got the Department of Revenue, we've got all the municipalities, we've got two taxes, we've got the 7% state sales tax, and then the Coliseum tax, I'll call it, with the other 5%. So we'll all agree that these are all issues that have to be resolved, and I'm wondering who's going to resolve that? That is, get the guidance out to revise whatever forms needed to be done. I'm thinking if every municipality has to do that, that's a lot of time and energy throughout the state for cities, large and small. Just from what I know and what I've seen, not that I interact much with, whether it's VRBO or Uber for that matter, it's just that these are disruptive technologies, and this is exactly why they are disruptive technologies. I don't think the platforms, VRBO, HomeAway, Price, whatever, I don't think they want to make these changes. Why would they? I'm going to put the ball in your court. I'm going to put the ball in your court. Am I accurate in that?
Again, I can't disclose who we've had voluntary collection agreements with for some time, but you have to understand there are platforms, there are management companies all over the state that management companies that were domiciled in Mississippi that have been collecting these taxes for quite some time. There are those that have been domiciled outside the state with absolutely no nexus in Mississippi that have had voluntary agreements with us that have been collecting these taxes for quite some time. When the law changes and puts that burden on them, yes, they're very concerned about being on the roll and collecting the tax. So I certainly think they are motivated by this bill to be registered and to be collected, which is also why when this legislation puts the burden of the tax liability on them to collect, they're not going to give these people an option to do it. They're going to be collecting it because that burden of that tax collection and remittance is now on them.
Okay, and maybe that's the rub, because we're asking the operators to provide verification that they are in fact paying the taxes. There's got to be, of course, that's why we're here today. What's the easiest, least obtrusive way of verifying that I run a short-term rental in the city of Biloxi, I've got a permit and I want to renew it, and I have some document that I can give to community development that can be verified if necessary, so there's some sort of auditing on the city's part, that resolves that issue. We don't need to know how much I made off the property, we just need to know that I've paid all the applicable taxes.
I would say that if the homeowner is contracted with a platform, they'll have evidence of that.
And would that evidence be, and you had mentioned the language of that agreement, maybe?
I believe so, but I can't speak for each one of them, and I personally don't have a home for rent, so, I mean, I would have to see these things printed out, what is given to the actual homeowner.
Well, the other thing is, what I've heard is that if I'm trying to operate legitimately and do everything I'm supposed to do, when I get online, I've got to look in an unobscure place that's not easily found in order to check the appropriate blocks to pay the appropriate taxes. So, I mean, it'd be great if I just...
I really can't speak to that from a homeowner's standpoint, because I can only speak from the companies on the other end, and I can tell you, they're set up for a distribution of city. We're getting the revenue. We're diverting the revenue. I can't speak to the confusion of what one company is creating maybe with their renters. So and that may be something where the city wants to contact these named companies.
Well, and I've tried to do that at times, and what I've found is they're not going to tell me anything. They tell me very little. I couldn't even find out how many short-term rentals they have registered on their platform, the city of Biloxi. They'll tell you you can go online, but they're not going to share that information with me. And my guess is they're not going to share that information with anybody else, and that they're very reluctant because it would require some time and energy, and of course that's money. And I want to sum up this part anyway with this question. I appreciate you all coming down. I know you're trying to help us resolve this issue as best you can, operating within the parameters of the law and what you're able to do or not able to do. So I appreciate the fact that you're here trying to help us work through this.
Well, I'll go on to say, of course, I have something here with me today that's a draft, which I'm not going to be passing out, but you spoke a minute ago about maybe some information to make this a little more broad for homeowners, and we have another little place on our website where we have some fact sheets about different industries, and we've got one in draft explaining to homeowners, a little more than what this says, but we've not released it yet because, as you say, we're all trying to figure out these problems, so I'm going to bring another one to the table, but I'm going to need help with the city, and I imagine that Veronica's going to be discussing this as she speaks in other places with the Municipal League. But there are a couple of other things. I've looked at, I know I've seen Gulfport's ordinance at one time. I saw a draft of it. Their attorney shared with that with us that some time ago, met with us before they ever tried to pass an ordinance. I've seen the things that you all are trying to do, which, I mean, I admire where you're trying to put noise ordinances into place. You're trying to require a certain amount of insurance that homeowners have to have if they're gonna do that. Everything from, you know, where the fire extinguishers are placed in the home and all these safety things. I mean, I realize this is quite a challenge for you all. And I know from the homeowners, you know, if I've got a home in a very nice neighborhood, I'd hate to know that somebody just bought a house next to me and that's all they're gonna do is rent it out and my neighbors are gonna change every weekend. You know, that's a lot of this has to be put into place to protect those homeowners too. So I know this is a challenge for you all, but let me point out a couple of things that we're trying to work through right now. Somebody who does this part-time, what's part-time? Any rental is subject to losing their homestead exemption to be enforced by the county. Now, we have whole homestead exemption division here, the Department of Revenue. We help the counties with that every day, but you know, at some point, we're going to be looking at how much homestead exemption has to go away. Because if you've got a city permit to have a short-term rental, you don't get homestead exemption anymore. So therefore, in most places, your property taxes have now at least doubled, if not greater. There's another issue here. And you can help us with this because you collect water bills inside the city limits. Everybody that's got a permit for a short-term rental has now got to have sales tax on their water bill. They've lost their residential exemption for all utilities. Now, we're in the process of trying to figure out how we're going to make that happen for power companies, gas utilities, everybody else. It's not that I rented it, oh, but I only do this, Linnell, a couple of weeks out of the year. Only during, you know, a festival down here, whatever. No, that's not what the reg says. You do any rental of that home, you've lost all, you know, the lady that has a beauty shop on her home and has it all on 1 meter has no exemption for her utilities, okay? So, have you gone that far and I'm not asking for anybody to answer this recorded, but have you gone that far in your council meetings to have already put in place that there's no more? Have you matched up your list of short-term rentals to your water billings and now put tax on those accounts? Okay, so we're going to be speaking about that in different municipalities, and there are going to be a lot of people that say, well, now I don't have any sales tax exemption on my utilities and my gas, water, electricity. Do I really want to do this? And I know as I spoke to some of you all, we talked about from year to year, this may change. They may decide one year they want to have a short-term rental permit, and then the next year they don't. Well, I think as we try to deal with this homestead exemption issue and this exemption on utilities, unless the legislature chooses to do something about that differently in law, right now, that's all subject to tax. And I think you're going to have people that are really going to weigh this out. If I don't really have serious commercial property that I bought with the intent of doing this, why in the world, I mean, is it making enough money to give up and pay double my property taxes or greater? And is it worth me having to pay sales tax on all of my utilities now? So I don't know the answer to that. It would be, you know, how much is my property in demand for short-term rental? So these are things that we're still having issues with before we put out some notice. So I'll tell you, we are trying to work with this too, and we've been asked by politicians the question of how are you handling this? Well, we're working on it. So water billings seem to be the easiest where cities are requiring permits for short-term rentals, because I've got some cities that aren't anywhere near where you are and having ordinances for the way that you all are putting this into place on the coast and how you're trying to monitor that. So I do admire you all for taking the steps to protect homeowners, to make sure that people are safe, everything from noise to insurance. I mean, lot of questions. I think I certainly would think twice before I wanted to rent my home out and leave it for a week to be rented out, you know, if I'm going to lose all of those things. So we are working diligently to be able to put some more information out that puts it in a little more step-by-step bullets. So bear with us. We hope to have something with that soon, but we're trying to address several issues at once.
I appreciate that, and really, I appreciate that information, and there's always this communication issue and then guidance, and I think MML would be an excellent way to help you get the information out. I also think anytime you have this kind of wrinkle that has to be ironed out, I'm just thinking it takes somebody's time and effort to do that, and my guess is, particularly in this corona situation, this COVID situation, where cities have lost funding and trying to dig out of that hole, you don't have any extra money laying around, so you're going to put this burden on somebody in the city, and likely another rock on the back of somebody in the Department of Revenue, probably already strapped for manpower, trying to do what you can to make progress and act rather than react.
Well, please understand, we will be available for any group of renters. If you pull your renters together, those that have permits, if you want educational opportunities for them, we'll be happy to come here and provide a speaker to answer questions directly from them, if that would be helpful. We're at your disposal as far as education for your taxpayers here. So if there's anything that you do as a group, maybe, I don't know if that's through a realtors group or, you know, however you might want to pull that together, that is a suggestion. We'd be glad to walk through.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that would be helpful. Thank you.
Because we're very short on time, I want to give Ms. Duke and Mr. Duke and Ms. Smith the opportunity to speak, but I know if you have any questions, short, succinct questions, so we can get to Ms. Smith and Mr. Duke as well. George?
My first question is that you passed a new law, a lot of versus new law. What was written in that change? What is the difference with the new law?
Well, this, if you're familiar with the Wayfair decision that basically brought in the internet sales piece, this past two years ago, the Supreme Court overturned a Quill decision, and that was, I believe, South Dakota versus Wayfair. And when the Supreme Court overturned that decision had said that if you didn't have physical presence in a state and you were selling into the state via internet sales, there was no liability to collect any sales tax for the states. And there had been a lot of push from retailers all over, you know, saying it's an unfair playing field. And so a lot of pressure had been put, and so the lawsuit finally occurred and happened and rolled up Supreme Court, and they overturned a Quill decision from many years ago, and Quill was an office supply type catalog store. And at any rate, when that happened, that opened up and said, if you are going to sell via the internet, and Mississippi always had on the books a law that said if you solicited via mail order, that our tax was due. We never took that out of the law, but it was universal. When the Quill decision came down many, many years ago, our law wasn't applicable anymore. So with the Wayfair decision that came down in favor of states saying you don't have to have brick and mortar presence here, if you are soliciting sales online, you have to then collect the taxes. So you have seen the legislation that has also come out for cities and counties through the infrastructure bill. And so we are now diverting use tax, and that is coming out to cities and counties as part of infrastructure being diverted like sales tax before. Use tax had been, with the exception of a few diversions off the top, a general fund diversion and not specifically going out to cities and counties. And so we had that bill take place. Well, then there were those companies, and I won't name them, but you all have probably bought some on them if you'll think with me just a minute. There's some websites that you can go to that company doesn't sell anything, but you and I sell to each other on that platform. Okay? No sales tax had ever been collected on that. When this bill passed, that company had to be registered and many others like it. So other places that we routinely were buying online, we had some companies, big companies, that came forth and voluntarily collected, but maybe not the marketplace, meaning it wasn't their products or it wasn't their company, but they also had other people that sell on these platforms. You and I can go out and sell on other companies' platforms. So when the Wayfair decision passed, that was not part of that, and states have gone in one by one by one by one and passed marketplace facilitator. So that is saying if you facilitate a sale between you and I on that website, and I go out there and look and buy something that you're selling, okay, then the marketplace has to collect on all of those. So now that tax is just growing more and more. So basically, we had a piece of the pie after the Wayfair decision went. Now we have 100% of the pie. So any of those sales happening online now have to have sales tax collected on them. And so that brought into play all of these facilitators that handle third-party rentals of homes, that sort of thing. So that's what I was speaking to. Mr. Lawrence, are you an attorney? Are you an attorney? Okay, I'm not, so I'm not going. Yes, sir. But I do have a chief of our legal division that might could answer that better. I cannot speak to whether or not that is a legal contract for an outside company that doesn't have nexus in the state of Mississippi to contract with me to rent my home. I really can't speak to the legality of that. I know it's the way we've been doing business for a while, because every time I'm wanting to rent a house on the beach down in Florida or Alabama, you know, I go through one. So I've been doing that for a long time, so they've been here. Well, I think the total of those two levies, that 5%, is really what's been the issue here today. I think your law is already in place to do that, and when the returns, when the taxpayers are registered that are supposed to collect it, and when the returns are properly collected, completed, you are getting that diversion.
Milton wants to answer the question.
Yes, sir. I'm telling you that the facilitators. If you came in to our, let me ask you this, are you on a platform? Do you have a contract with one of these?
Where's the handheld mic? Mr. Sakara.
You're going to come to the city, you're going to get a permit for that short-term rental, and then they're going to ask you, are you on a platform, are you not on a platform? If you're not on a platform, then you're going to have to be registered with the Department of Revenue, okay? But if you're on a platform, that money is already being paid. Any business that walks in down here and the Biloxi comes into the city hall to get also a city permit, correct? To do business, to sell TPP or to rent, whatever is subject to sales tax. The city gets a listing of that every month. If they are registered with us at the Department of Revenue, the city can match their list against our list, okay? And that way the clerk knows, okay, this one came in here, they got that little boutique down the road, and they've been here 2 months, and I don't see them on my list. So you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna call Veronica, and they're gonna say, hey, we gave a permit to this little boutique at such and such address, and I don't see them on my city diversion list. And so Veronica's gonna go in there and find out if they didn't complete their registration correctly, because you know what? They could have marked outside the city limits. And your clerk is right. You weren't getting any money for that. So Veronica has to go back and change that and fix what they didn't do correctly on their registration. And then the next month that's going to show up, and then we'll also, we have some rules about back diverting on that, and we'll get that.
Thank you, Ms. Strait.
you.
Mr. Sakara, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be very brief. Milton Segarra from Coastal Mississippi. Apartment rentals will continue to grow. We're a perfect destination for that. And we're leaving millions of dollars on the table right now. A potential solution, and I'm glad the politicians are taking the necessary steps to make it happen in terms of the law and the structure, but this could be a possible solution. One third of all the taxes in the state of Mississippi in terms of hospitality and tourism are generated here. This is a significant portion for that. In our case, room tax is our main source of revenue. This is very important to us, to our president. It's part of our goals this year. But here's a potential solution. Recognizing the importance of that, why don't we do a task force? We have 1/3 of all the things that of the taxes. Can we do a public partnership between DOR and all of us, in which we will participate? We recognize there is a cost to do this, to the DOR. So maybe we can participate. I know the DOR gets 3% in administrative fees from all the room tax. Being this so important, can we allocate some of that money and create a task force based here in the coast so we can put in place the law that is going to be approved? And really, because I'm sure we're going to get the law and everything. The key will be to execute that, to enforce that. So if we're talking about 1/3 of all the revenue, why don't we do something together? Let's do a task force between the DOR, Coastal Mississippi is more than happy to do, I'm sure some others as well, and let's deal with that part of the situation together. And I think that will send a very strong message to the rest of the state, and believe me, we're going to collect that money. In our case, we're talking about more than $1 million just in room tax revenue from us. So I just want to share that, bring that possibility. I don't know if that's legal, possible or not. I have no idea. But we need to start creating some opportunities, because if not, we're going to continue discussing this for the next few years, and we will not see the money that we are all entitled in the next few years. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for
We will certainly take that on up from here today to our commissioner as well.
Thank you, Ms. Strait.
That would not be our decision, but we will certainly discuss that with him.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett?
I have just several questions, and most of them we can just answer with yes or no. We're getting short on time, so, and some of this you may have already covered. I had to step out a couple of times. On the third parties that collect the taxes, Expedia, for example, when they collect the taxes, is there a breakdown of how those taxes are allocated? Or do they just send at the end of the month, or however, they're set up to pay? Let's just say they send $1 million in. How do you determine what comes to the city of Biloxi? And
I went up to a tourism group in North Mississippi with Veronica a few years ago, and that might be very helpful for you all, for us to come in and to go through a return and actually show you how this is put together, how it comes out on a return, and how the diversion happens behind the scene. I think that might be very helpful for us to show
So there is a way
that.
that whenever they pay to determine, okay, next
Yes.
question is, these third parties, do they fall under Nexus laws? So
They
Expedia,
do.
Priceline, Airbnb,
Yes, with this bill
VRBO.
that passed in July, yes.
Okay. Third question, and this doesn't apply to you, but community development, Linda brought up the deal of the people when they go in and they fill out the forms to set up the taxing through Expedia or whatever. Can we, whenever they come in and fill out their application, give them a form that says, hey, here's the requirements of the taxes and the setup that you're required to put in on that platform, and provide that to them so that the ones that aren't educated, whenever they come and get their permit to have that, we educate them and say, let's put, give them a sheet of paper that whenever they go and fill that form out, or if they've already filled it out and it's incorrect, they can go and correct it. And I think that that's something that we could get from them, require to have from the homeowners or the agencies that represent a group of homeowners. We could make that a requirement that they do have that set up correctly. And then the third thing is, and this is stepping outside of short-term rentals, but whenever we first had this conversation, this came up. Small businesses like Miss Wilson's that were, let's say she's in Gulfport, but she's doing business in Biloxi and Gulfport. Not just short-term rentals, but let's say you have a small business that has a business in Ocean Springs, Biloxi, Gulfport, Pascagoula, and at the end of the month, you just have them registered online, and I don't know if this is possible or not. Their main business is registered in Ocean Springs, but they're collecting taxes in all four.
Permit location is required to have a number, and all the sales have to be reported per permit location.
All right.
That are domiciled here in Mississippi, so it is diverted according to the permit
Okay,
location.
so there's no way for them, if they're just filing one report and putting in one so they have to break it down and tell you what's coming from this location, this location,
Right,
this
there
location.
has to be, there's,
Okay, Ms. Wilson is
permit
shaking her
location.
head and saying, no, she doesn't.
Ms. Wilson, well, he's bringing you the handheld right there.
Where am I going? Okay. When we started the company in 2007, my boss, I was not there. I didn't come until 11. However, it was just a few condos in Gulfport, and over time it has grown. So it's been the same sales tax ID number for many years. Now, just recently, y'all have overridden my account to where I can do it for Biloxi and Gulfport, but I'm under tax codes. I have 76, 71, and 80. 71 and 80 are telecommunication and something else. So would someone like myself have to have two different sales tax numbers? Because I was told I did not.
no, because with the rentals, you're going to file a distribution by city. So not every house that you are renting.
That's right.
Or do you have a permit location for?
So until just
No.
recently, y'all didn't give me the access to do it. And when I spoke to Miss Veronica, it's an override. So it's not set up for hospitality to be able to do that. I'm under something completely different where I have to file zeros in order to break down the city taxes.
And I believe, had we known that in your registration, it would have been set up like that, knowing that there were properties in multiple locations, multiple cities.
So it
I
would,
believe, and Veronica, can you speak to that a little bit?
But my main concern is I just want to make sure that Gulfport's not getting tax dollars that are being generated in Biloxi.
When you asked the question earlier, I think you were talking about a retail location, and you wanted
I'm
to know if
talking
retail.
about businesses in general, yes.
Okay, they're all, if they are at having a location that is selling TPP, they're open, we have a permit location for every one of those.
Okay.
Okay?
That is correct. Yes, they are required, if they're selling tangible personal property, they are required to have a permit for each of the locations. Now, the rental companies for the bed and breakfasts or home rentals, that is different, but it is knowing upfront. If we need to know upfront that if they are renting homes or if they're a platform from homes, that way we can set it up and program the system to where they can file the distribution by city.
Well, Ms. Smith, many of these start with one house or one location, and it's in Gulfport. And then they expand and they pick up more properties in different areas. So when they originally set it up, it would just be in one city. How do we account for somebody that expands their rental program into multiple municipalities?
So we would rely on some of you to help us. When they come in to renew their permit each year, you can ask them if anything has changed. And then they can let us know if anything has changed. So we just need communication. We're here to help you all. If you all call us and you think there's some, and many times other cities do it, they let us know, hey, we don't think we're getting an inadequate amount of revenue, and we'll ask them first, have you looked at your distribution or your monthly report? And with these, you can't always, because if you're on a platform, they're not going to list it.
Is there a way to have somebody that is applying to have a property in a second municipality, such as Biloxi, from when they started in Gulfport, to show us any verification that they've updated that with you? Is there anything they can give us to demonstrate that they have updated it with the Department of Revenue, that they are now in multiple cities instead of just their origination city?
If they can contact us, or they can, with the rentals, they may not have anything substantial to present to you, but also the city can contact our department direct and say, hey, although we may not share all of their pertinent and confidential information with you, but we will research that behind the scenes. And when you all let us know that you have information that they are in multiple cities, we do contact them and say, we have come across information that you are in multiple, and we will ask them to go back and amend those returns for 36 months. And although we may not share the windfall of information with the city, you will see an increase in the next month's diversion.
And also, that happens routinely in audit too, that we would get it corrected and we would get the diversion for the back period of the audit corrected too. So in audit, we're certainly going to discover that. But when you're asking them from year to year what changes, I understand your dilemma. If they had a permit in Gulfport and they now have property in Biloxi, I would assume they had to come over here and get a Biloxi permit with you all for a short-term rental. So that if they were already registered in Gulfport and they've got a short-term rental over here, you can certainly pick up the phone and call us and verify, you know, hey, Linnell, Veronica, have y'all got them in both cities? I mean, you can do that anytime. Your clerk can call us at any time with that.
Yeah, most of my questions were answered, but I am interested in that workshop to understand that breakdown. And I appreciate you guys coming here, giving us this information. It shined a whole new light on a whole lot of things that are out there. So if we can get a date, Mr. President, to get her back here to kind of give us that workshop to show us that breakdown.
What I will do, and I think you suggested that Ms. Smith was part of that also, correct? If you would, check your calendars and let us know when you're available so we can try to coordinate with the city and get the council a date in which you guys are available to come back down. Mr. Duke, I don't know if you had something to contribute. We appreciate you coming down to what some call the southernmost portion of the state and what others call the greatest city in the state. Tomatoes, tomatoes. But if you have anything to contribute, please do it now.
Thank you. Yeah, this is kind of like coming home for me. When I first graduated college, I lived in actually Gulfport, right on Highway 90, so we were over here all the time, my wife and I, for several years. Luckily, we did move before Katrina hit because the apartments that we lived in were completely washed away. So just a couple of things just to reiterate. Number one, several times the question was asked about, what do we do about these taxes going back to, I think it was '07, because the number of rooms per facility was changed in the bill. Of course, we can only go back 36 months, and that's assuming that we have somebody that we can audit or somebody that we know about to audit. As far as the platforms being involved, House Bill 379, I believe it is, that was passed June 30th, that went into effect July 1st. That's the one that required your companies like Expedia and Priceline to register to collect our taxes. Prior to that, we didn't have any ability to hold them liable for that. So we wouldn't be able to go back past this July. That's when it started. And I would also say that I fully understand. I've had a lot of these meetings over the past 5 years with different cities and different tourism groups that rely on this funding. This particular issue is relatively new, and we are working through problems. I mean, we tried to get ahead, but it was a very short time frame, and then we're working through problems as they arise as well. So certainly if any information that the cities or the tourism groups have for us to help us identify the local agencies that are maybe renting in various cities so that we know that they are set up correctly to file those would be helpful, because we can't always identify them with information that we have. A lot of businesses are set up as an LLC. They have a name. It might be an individual's name or some name that's really not consistent with the fact that they're renting homes or managing that. So that would be helpful as well. Trying to think if there's anything else that I can maybe shed a little light on. It is good for us to come to these, because some of the information that was shared today, I don't know that we were fully aware of or had a full appreciation of. The fact that some of these sites are trying, it sounds like, trying to put the burden of knowing what tax rate to charge back on the homeowner is concerning. And I think that's something that we're going to have to try to work on and work with these third-party companies to make sure that they understand what their liability is, and help them to understand that they shouldn't be relying on that individual to tell them, hey, you got to charge this tax on my behalf. They should know, based on where that property is, what the tax is.
And I want to say, too, one of the comments that we've gotten from a couple of the larger companies, we all know that this happens differently in Louisiana, different in Alabama. And so when we've told some companies, no, you collect it all, it comes in on one return, the Department of Revenue does all the diversion, they're very surprised about that, and they're typically relieved, okay? Because, like, it's that simple. It's that simple. The return's a little complicated. You got to list them all out here, but it's that simple. And we don't have to file multiple returns and all that. No. It comes in on one return. So I might also say, and not in defense, but I think maybe some of that confusion too could be that they're writing something generic on this, where this, it's not about just one state that they're trying to put information out for. I think that could be causing some of the confusion, because it doesn't happen in Alabama this way with the same company, doesn't happen the same way in Louisiana. So we're right next to one another, and I just wanted to throw that out there. So I think, in our conversation with some of these companies through registration and issues too, I think we can also relay to them some of the things we've heard here today.
Thank you, Ms. Strait. Now, we're out of time. I'm going to give the council the opportunity to wrap it up. Mr. Barrett?
I just want to address what you just said. I know a lot about online sales tax because I own an online company. And you just mentioned that it's different in Louisiana and Alabama, but anybody that has an online company that does a substantial amount of sales, there's softwares out there that set up, and when that goes in, that software automatically sends that in and does whatever, files whatever the laws for Mississippi are and whatever the laws for Alabama are, and the difference. And at the end of the month, all I do is hit a button, and it basically submits all that, and then or breaks it all down for me, and all I have to do is send it into the individual states. And I think there's like 43 states in America that are under Nexus laws, or it was somewhere around there, that have Nexus laws that I have to pay sales tax to. The other 7 don't have anything. We don't have to collect it. We don't have to pay it. And my system, that software that I have automatically does that. So I would think that people like Expedia, which makes a whole lot more money than I do, would have these softwares that would automatically break that down.
May I respond? Yeah, in response to your question or your statement there, we are very familiar with those softwares. Unfortunately, they're not set up to handle this marketplace facilitator of hotel lodging type facilities. It's a different ball game, because what you're talking about is I'm shipping to this state, I'm shipping to that state, and I'm tracking that way. In this case, it's a little different. Plus, you're dealing with them figuring out how to report where the property is to those companies and making sure that they're correcting the correct tax. A lot of what they do is they put together a tax matrix based on location, so they know what all the combined rates are for every location. Again, unfortunately, Mississippi is new to that arena for them, so they've never had to do that way
I get it,
here.
because different counties have different, outside of the 7 or whatever percent, there's different tax structures. Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Guines, your wrap up, sir?
One thing I'd like to share with you, council, with the council, is that in our communication with the Department of Revenue to prepare for this, we were not aware of the utility billing tax. And the Department of Revenue made us aware, and Linnell made me aware of that. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've submitted a list of all 300-plus short-term rentals down to the Water Department, and those water bills are now being, and the sales tax is being added to the water bill. So we were not aware of that. We were aware of the issue with ad valorem tax and the homestead exemption, but it was only a tip that we got from Department of Revenue that allowed us to get caught up here on that utility billing.
Well, no wonder you've been so happy, Mr. Leonard.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilman Tisdale, your wrap up.
I have nothing more, thank you.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Lawrence?
Well, the way the tax works is in the month of, let's say this is October, so I have a stay in October. I'm going to pay the tax to whoever I pay it to as the consumer, right? I either pay it to the third-party company or I pay it directly to a hotel. The hotel then has until the 20th of the following month to report that on their tax return and remit it to the Department of Revenue. Then the Department of Revenue remits that the month after that to the governing municipalities, whether it be a city or a county or the state, whoever it may be. Sometimes it's money that goes to a special fund. So all that accounting happens the month after those returns are due. So it's a 2-month lag from the time the customer pays it to the time it goes back to wherever it's going to go in the state. Did that answer your question? Okay.
That's a whole nother discussion, George. We're out of time. We're going to talk about Uber. Let's talk about Uber at a
Oh, Uber? Yeah, taxi cab service is not a service subject to sales tax. So Uber is not paying tax right now. That would require a change in the law.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank all the dignitaries and representatives from our subgovernmental groups for being here and being part of this conversation. Also, thank you guys for coming down from the Department of Revenue here to Biloxi, Mississippi, and we look forward to seeing you guys again. Jerry, one thing, could you add one question on the application for short-term rentals? Simply ask if they have other rentals in different cities, so that will prompt us to communicate with the Department of Revenue about their updated statuses. And lastly, I will entertain a motion to recess.
Second.
Excuse me, a motion to adjourn. I've got a motion by George Lawrence, a second by Felix Skynes. All in favor, signal to raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.